Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Just bear with me, it's currently raining so it's very loud in the warehouse. But anyways, today we're picking up where we left off in the previous video. This is part 2. So if you haven't seen part 1 already, I'm going to put the little key card thing up there. Go watch that first. But yeah, so let me quickly run you through what's happened off camera since the last video and then also what is going to be happening in this video. So the radiator, I've resoldered the seam that was leaking and repainted it, so this is ready to go back into the car. I've cleaned up the manifolds, this one as best as I can, that one I've repainted. So we're quickly gonna install these first and then we'll get to the carburetor. Regarding the carburetor, I've made these holes concentric, opened everything up with a Dremel a bit. I'll show you that in more detail once all of that's assembled as well. But yeah, basically put that back and then start putting this on. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention in the previous video is with this carburetor, your standard kick down linkage isn't going to work anymore. So you need one of these, which is like a kick down cable. Now, these things are universal, they never fit. So I'm gonna have to modify these brackets and make it fit. Also, the standard throttle cable won't just work on this. I'm gonna have to make a new like custom throttle linkage so that that works correctly and all that. So we have some DIY work going on and some custom things that we need to fabricate for this video. Hopefully we find time for that in this video. But for now, I just wanna start getting the car back together. So, gonna jump right to it. Stay tuned and hope you guys enjoy this video. Okay, so it looks like a car again. Manifolds are back on, radiators back in. I put in a new thermostat while I was at it because I might as well. Still need to hook up the exhaust and the transmission cooler. I'll do all of that off camera. I need to find a new grommet for the PCV valve because mine tore. So I'll have to look among all my shit there if I have one. Wish me luck, I doubt it. Anyways, I'll do all that off camera. Let's get into the carburetor because that is why you all are here. Now, as I mentioned previously, we'll need to come up with some type of bracketry to make the throttle cable work with this linkage. Also, we need to install a kickdown cable because this kickdown rod will no longer work. Because on the other standard 2-barrel carburetors, your throttle linkage sits here. However, on the Webers, you're 90 degrees off until here. Regarding the Weber itself, if you read there, that says Farges carb and not Weber carb. So let's quickly go into a little discussion regarding the Weber carburetors and I'll tell you everything that I've learned while doing my research on this carburetor as well as my opinion on it. Again, that's my opinion. Do your own research and form your own opinions. Don't quote me on anything I say. Anyways, I think up until it was 1992, Weber carburetors were produced in Italy. And after that, the production was moved to Spain under license. So all the carburetors produced after 1992 in Spain still count as genuine Webers. However, from my research and the articles that I've read, apparently there are a lot of quality control issues with the genuine Weber carburetors that were produced in Spain. So if you can find an original Italian Weber, firstly, good luck. They're becoming very rare. Secondly, you have to have deep pockets. They're quite expensive and that's for a second-hand carb that you still need to rebuild. I think I saw one go on eBay for like 375 US, which is way outside of my budget. And the new genuine ones that are being sold, that were produced in Spain, go for a similar amount, which is still out of my budget. So I decided that if I'm gonna have to gamble on quality control issues, I'm not gonna shell out the money for a genuine Spanish Weber. I'm instead gonna go for one of the Chinese clone ones, which cost half the price, which is what a lot of other people online seems to do as well. Now, regarding all the various Chinese clones you can find, most of them are no-name brands or being sold on eBay. But apparently this Farge one is the best of the Chinese. I'm doing this a lot in this video, sorry. Apparently the Farge ones are the best of the Chinese clones. They have the least amount of quality control issues. So fingers crossed, I hit the lottery and got a good one. Because I cannot return this, from Africa, and I don't have the money to buy another one. So wish me luck. Hopefully I got lucky and I got a good one. Now, regarding the tuning of the carburetor itself, there are plenty of videos online of how to do that and how to set up these carbs properly. So go look at one of those videos. I'm not gonna run through that in detail. What I will do is let you know what jets and air correctors and idle jets and all that shit I'm gonna go with. I'll put that in the description for you if you are curious about that. However, one thing I will tell you that I found out about this carburetor, which might be of interest to you guys, is regarding this little set screw for the secondary throttle linkage. Now, from all the Weber shop manuals that I've downloaded, none of them mention anything about what to do with this. And I only found one article online that mentions what you're supposed to do with this. So if that's of interest for you, this is what I found. I don't know if it's correct, so I hope it is. But apparently you need to set this screw until it's a 0.02 of an inch tolerance between the linkage. I assume you do that while the carburetor is out and cold, because once it's mounted, obviously you cannot reach that screw. So that's what I learned. Hopefully that's right. If anyone else is curious about that, that's the info. But yeah, that's basically it for this carburetor. Hopefully we can get it up and running. Now let's quickly finish off with this adapter plates. If you recall from the previous video, I complained that the holes weren't concentric, so I made them be with a Dremel. Also, I mold this bottom plate down by about 4 millimeters because it was way thicker than it needed to be. And also, like I said, I want to use my pancake filter, so I want as much clearance as possible. But anyways, that's basically the adapter plate situation. Now, this little plug here, I need to take out and put in a barbed fitting to hook up the PCV valve. But anyways, I think that's about it. I'm quickly gonna sort out the throttle and the kickdown cable and show you guys what I came up with. And yeah, I'll be right back. Righto, so we have everything hooked up and ready to go for the first start. Let me just quickly show you everything that I've done to make this work. So a very simple bracket for the cables themselves. Used some angle iron, cut it, bent it, weld it, and it mounts to the same original holes as the stock bracket. For the throttle lever itself, I just used some flat steel plate. It's at about 40 to 45 degree incline, not sure, I just eyeballed it. I welded a 90-degree tab to it so that I can bolt this plate to 2 locations on the original throttle bracketry, and it turned out quite nice. For the distance for the kickdown from the pivot point to where you should mount your kickdown, you can measure it from one of your old carburetors, and in this case it worked out well. It barely clears, like it clears with about 4 millimeters, so that worked out quite nicely. For the distance from the pivot point to where you should mount your throttle cable, you can also measure it from the old carburetor, but I noticed on the previous carburetors, when I actually step on my pedal, wide open throttle, the carburetor itself doesn't open wide open throttle. So if you want it to be more accurate, you need to do a little bit of math. Let me quickly show you how to do that math. So what you want to do is disconnect your throttle cable from the carburetor, have someone step on the pedal, wide open throttle, and measure the distance that your cable will travel. You want to go online then to a website that I use that's called Omni Calculator, and go to its arc length calculator. You want to plug in the distance traveled as the chord length of an arc. You then need to plug in the degrees that your throttle opens. Now on these carburetors it's 90 degrees, but I noticed on the Weber it's a little bit less than 90. I couldn't find online what it was, but I estimated to be about 80 degrees, and that seemed to work fine. So you plug in those two values and it will spit out the radius of the arc length, which is what you need to use for your lever arm, and in our case that was 32 millimeters. So that's how you can do that if you want your carburetor to fully open with your throttle, as it should. Just one thing I want to point out, my little spring that I have here for a return wasn't strong enough to mount to this little bolt standoff that I made and actually return the throttle to its resting position, but I just mounted it here temporarily. I'll get a stiffer spring next week and fix all that. Sidetrack. Anyways, for the kickdown linkage itself, I'm not going to show that because it's underneath the car and I can't be bothered climbing underneath the car again and getting a light out, but it's fairly straightforward. It's just a little 90-degree piece of plate with two holes drilled into it. One hole mounts to the transmission on one of those ears, and the other hole the cable runs through. Now, a little bit of a pain in the ass to do that one, because in my case I have a column shift car, so the brackets and linkages for the column shift runs on the same side of the transmission as the kickdown, and with my big hands, kind of a pain in the ass to get in there, but fairly straightforward. You should be able to figure it out if you want to do it for yourself. One thing I want to point out for all my Southern Hemisphere viewers with right-hand drive cars, your stock Slant 6 throttle cable isn't long enough to do the loop required for the new angle of the throttle, and I mean this loop. It's not long enough to do that. You will need a longer throttle cable. Thankfully, I had a longer throttle cable lying around that I stripped out of one of the Barracudas. So that saved me a huge headache. But yeah, that is something to note. If you want to do a similar setup, you will need a longer throttle cable. Other than that, not much else to show. Hooked up the PCV valve to the bottom of the adapter plates, hooked up a fuel line, hooked up the vacuum line for the distributor. For the electric choke, I just pulled 12 volt positive from the positive side of the ballast resistor so that it only comes on with the ignition. So that's fairly straightforward. Now, I think that's about it for this video. We'll fire it up in the next video, install the O2 sensor, and get this carburetor jetted for max fuel economy. So that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next one. Cheers.